Being a 7-time world champion doesn't come easy and often takes serious skill.
Hamilton wins the Turkish Grand Prix and is a 7-time champion of the world.
So here are 20 times Lewis Hamilton humiliated his opponents.
Going to be last on the brakes. Leclerc has that inside line. Perez goes off the track, cuts the chicane. Off goes Leclerc. Through goes Hamilton. Unbelievable stuff.
At number 20 on our list, we have to look at Hamilton's favorite track and see how the champion dominated at Silverstone. During the 2020 F1 season, the championship battle was heating up by the time the calendar reached Silverstone. On the first lap, Hamilton and Verstappen came together, sending the Dutch driver smashing into the barriers at Copsey Corner.
The accident. Oh, and it was the merest of touches, but it was enough, and look how the wheel has come.
Remaining in the race, Hamilton received a 10-second time penalty for the collision, forcing the British driver to spend an extra 10 seconds in the pits. After emerging from the pits, Hamilton had a mere 10 laps to go and the teammate Bottas let him by. This allowed the 7-time champion to use his better grip, and 8 laps later he would close in on Leclerc, who was still leading. Thanks to the extra grip, Hamilton sailed past a struggling Ferrari dealing with a power unit issue, ultimately winning the race and earning the Driver of the Day award. The next year, he would again return to Silverstone to pull off one of the overtakes of the season at number 19. In a season that saw Mercedes struggling to find form, Hamilton was often left to his own devices and found himself in his zone in most races. However, the British driver simply loves showing his skill at home in Silverstone. With the race coming to a close, Hamilton caught up to Leclerc and Perez, with a Ferrari on the wrong tyres and constantly defending against a Red Bull. However, as the three drivers approached the final corners, Leclerc and Perez had to compromise their entry, leaving Lewis in the best position to sneak along the inside and overtake both cars by the time they reached turn 1.
Going to be last on the brakes. Leclerc has that inside line. Perez goes off the track, cuts the chicane. Off goes Leclerc. Through goes Hamilton. Unbelievable stuff.
For our number 18 spot, the benefit of assistance can often make things easier for a driver. During the 2012 season, Sebastian Vettel had been dominating in his Red Bull, which ultimately earned him his 3rd World Championship. However, a skirmish in Kota brought the two together and a hard battle ensued for the race lead. As the two reached the longest straight in the circuit, Vettel was subject to a miscreant backmaker not getting out of the way. Lewis used this to his advantage, and by the time the two reached the straight, Hamilton sailed by for the race lead and ultimately came out on top. Speaking of battles with Vettel, number 17 is where Hamilton showed his true skill once again. Without the assistance of backmakers this time, Vettel was the hunter at the 2017 Belgian Grand Prix. In an action-packed race, the safety car eventually made an appearance and everything came down to how the restart went. With the safety car pulling into the pits, both drivers set off. Vettel, with the assistance of Slipstream, was on the tail of the Mercedes heading through Eau Rouge, but a cunning tactic by the Brit forced the German driver to back off on the Camel Straight. Hamilton noticed the Ferrari on his tail and slightly reduced his throttle input, forcing Vettel to back off and completely disrupting his momentum.
Hamilton leads. Vettel is right behind him. The gap is less than a car length. Sebastian Vettel pulls to one side. The edges ahead. Hamilton fights back. Hamilton protects the lead. Kimi Räikkönen on the inside of Bottas.
Now, Hamilton didn't always use cunning throttle tactics, and often his understanding of car placement would triumph, as we see at number 16. In 2014, Hamilton and Rosberg set out to bring back the championship for Mercedes. However, both drivers wanted to win as well. In the final laps of the Bahrain GP, Rosberg found himself on the tail of Hamilton, and no team orders were given. As both drivers approached turn 1, Rosberg had DRS, giving him an extra speed advantage over his teammate. Using this advantage was what Rosberg did, and upon the entry of turn 1, Rosberg sent it down the inside, outbraking Hamilton and himself. The British driver responded by remaining cool and letting Rosberg by before performing the traditional switchback move to get him on the exit and into the chicane. Lewis would ultimately hold off the German to win. But Lewis has always been somewhat of a risk-taker, and this is proven at our number 15 spot. During the 2018 Bahrain Grand Prix, Lewis was dealt a blow with a gearbox penalty. This forced the Mercedes driver to start the race in 9th position. After a quiet first lap, Ricciardo brought out the virtual safety car. However, upon the restart, Lewis was charging, overtaking Alonso on the pit straight before nearly outbraking himself into turn 1. Hamilton simply sent it past both Ocon and Hülkenberg in one fell swoop, emerging in front of both as they ran up to turn 4.
Look at this for a triple overtake.
This is fantastic. The McLaren behind Hamilton, you can just about see the track through the sparks.
At number 14, we go back in time to the 2011 Chinese Grand Prix. Another frustrating race ensued, with tyre degradation proving a real issue for the teams. During the race, Hamilton opted for a 3-stop strategy, but this paid off when he found himself on the tail of Sebastian Vettel on all the tyres. Hamilton simply sent it down the inside of turn 7, pushing Vettel slightly wide, but emerging as the race leader. Number 13 proves that experience is vital. Plenty has been said over the 2021 Formula One season, but the season opener in Bahrain gave fans exactly what they were expecting. Going into the final few laps of the race, Hamilton was leading and Verstappen, on a softer tyre compound, was looking much faster. However, as the two went side by side leading up to turn 4, Hamilton was on the inside. The British driver simply maintained his line instead of fully engaging in the battle. This forced Verstappen the long way around and off the track. The Dutch driver was ordered to give back the position.
But will Hamilton be complaining because he took the position whilst off the racetrack?
But Lewis has always been a complete driver, as he proved in 2008 at Silverstone. Silverstone is always where you can expect the British driver to be at his best. It was during the 2008 season when Hamilton started 4th on the grid in a race with torrential rain. In fact, most drivers spun, but Lewis kept his car on the track. Instead of engaging in battles in these conditions, the British driver just kept his cool and sailed to an easy victory. Races are often won during the race, but some can be won in qualifying, as Hamilton proved at the 2018 edition of the Singapore GP at number 11. On a circuit where the Mercedes was struggling with setup issues, Lewis barely made it out of Q1. In fact, the Mercedes was around half a second off the pace of the Ferrari in FP3. However, Hamilton simply became one with the car on his first run at Q3. After crossing the line, he was 3 seconds faster than the Q2 time set by Vettel. Eventually, Hamilton would earn pole, being 0.3 faster than Verstappen. Now, composure is good, but a bit of anger can spur on success, as proven at number 10. In what is considered the tipping point of the 2018 season, Lewis fell out of qualifying in Q2. This left the Brit to start from 14th, and on Sunday he was visibly angry. Lewis would embarrass almost everyone on the grid in the wet, and after Vettel misjudged turn 13 and spun off, Lewis would lead and convert into another victory. This success in the wet often made Lewis stand out, as we saw at the 2020 Turkish GP at number 9. With Hamilton leading the championship, it was only a matter of time before he became a 7-time champion. Turkey was added to the calendar due to the international pandemic, but the new surface was still green. Many cars struggled to find grip, but Hamilton made the call to pit for a second pair of intermediate on lap 6. This put him back down in 6th position, but a Mercedes driver pushed through the field. Eventually, he would do 46 laps on the intermediate, using it as slicks once the grip wore off, and even lapping teammate Bottas in the process. This earned Hamilton his 7th World Championship. A year prior, Lewis would probably land his biggest blow to Verstappen, not only embarrassing Max, but the entire Red Bull crew at number 8. In a notoriously boring and tough Hungarian Grand Prix, it was once again grip that made the difference. The lead changed hands when Hamilton pit first, but Verstappen would eventually pit and hand it back. However, Lewis was not pulling away and made the surprise decision to pit again. On fresh rubber and one tire softer than Verstappen, the Mercedes reeled in the Red Bull. With nothing to defend, Hamilton easily overtook the Dutchman to regain the lead and ultimately converted. But this wasn't the only time Lewis would concede another pit stop to beat Verstappen. A few years later, the two would once again battle, and this time the championship was on the line. Heading into the 2021 Spanish GP, Verstappen looked in charge and would lead the race, with Hamilton struggling to make headway. Once again, the decision was made to pit Lewis for a second time. Coming out 22 seconds behind the Red Bull, Lewis would close the gap in a mere 18 laps. And 6 laps from the finish, he overtook a defenseless Red Bull before pulling away for the victory. As we count down the top 5, we have to start with arguably one of the best ever Hamilton overtakes. With Sao Paulo being another favorite for the 7-time world champ, it was this time during his rookie season in 2007. With a championship on a knife edge, the battle for victory between Kimi Raikkonen and his Ferrari meant Hamilton had to put on a massive performance. The British driver delivered a moment of brilliance at Interlagos, sending one down the inside of Rubens Barrichello. Lewis didn't look like making the apex at one point, but emerged ahead of the Brazilian. Even the commentators were left in awe.
Risky move, and he takes that risk.
Oh my good lord, I can't believe he did that.
Even though the 2021 edition of Abu Dhabi is something Hamilton wants to forget, we cannot fault his performance before the safety car in our number 4 spot. Hamilton would start the race from second on the grid, but thanks to a faulty start from Verstappen, the Brit pulled alongside and eventually took the lead just a few corners later. From here, Hamilton simply pulled away. Even after dealing with Perez being a nuisance, Hamilton simply kept on pulling away, eventually leading the race by more than 20 seconds before the safety car hit. In fact, no one seemed to be on par with the Mercedes, or come close to matching his lap times. A year later, Lewis made one of the moves of the season. At number 3, we'll look at the 2022 Italian Grand Prix. Hamilton started the race from 19th after a grid penalty, but relentlessly chased down his competitors. He would eventually finish the race in 5th, but not before making a double overtake around the inside of turn 1. This was despite having minor damage from debris after an incident that occurred in front of him. Bear in mind that this wasn't when he had the best car on the grid. Our number 2 spot goes to the 2016 Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. One might argue that Rosberg ultimately came out as the victor, but this proved the racing skill of Hamilton once again. Knowing that he needed Rosberg to finish in 3rd or lower, the British driver slowed up the entire field to allow someone to overtake the German. This never happened, but proved that even when Hamilton was reducing his own speed, no one truly could pull alongside and overtake the champ. And only one moment could make it to number 1. We once again traveled to Interlagos for the 2021 Formula 1 season. With Mercedes almost revamping the car and fitting a new engine, Hamilton was to start the race from the back of the grid. The British driver entered the sprint race, overtaking everyone to finish in 5th. However, another penalty forced him to the back of the grid for the race on Sunday. During the race, Lewis simply made a fool of everyone ahead of him, and with a couple of laps to go, he was in 2nd. Verstappen tried to defend valiantly, but ultimately, Lewis soared past his title rival to earn what he would describe as one of the most special races ever. But Hamilton hasn't shown any signs of slowing down, and with almost 2 decades of experience, no one will be surprised to see him embarrass the field a couple more times. So make sure you subscribe so you never miss another Hamilton overtake.